Good evening to you. I'm Evan Watson. Welcome to this story. I've been reporting on the Multnomah County ambulance response crisis for well over a year now. Ambulance provider AMR has failed to meet response time standards, arriving late to emergency calls. They blame a national paramedic shortage and the county's unique two-paramedic requirement. Their formal proposal to improve response times urged the county to temporarily change the staffing requirement to one paramedic and one EMT instead of two paramedics. Well, this morning, Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Pederson responded, and it's tonight's big story. I've previously called this a standoff between county EMS leaders and Vega Pederson versus AMR leadership. And today, Vega Pederson doubled down again. She rejected AMR's proposal to switch to a one paramedic, one EMT model, saying the company hasn't done enough to bring in more paramedics, even though she recognizes there's a national shortage.
AMR continues to propose changing the way we do business instead of taking the necessary steps to improve their service. I want to be clear, AMR's conduct in this crisis is irresponsible and unacceptable. They're allowing a crisis in our community to worsen so they can make more money instead of recruiting, hiring, and retaining enough first responders on staff to provide the services that they've agreed to.
So Vega Pederson says the county is moving to formal mediation with AMR. She threatened another fine, this time $1.6 million for recent months of late responses, on top of $500,000 earlier last year. She wants county experts and the Oregon Health Authority to review the current ambulance service plan. She wants AMR to subcontract, and she says moving to a one-and-one model would shift costs onto taxpayers.
Taxpayers will pay if city fire departments have to respond to more calls. And if those fire departments can't go to more calls, we'll have fewer higher trained paramedics responding and will be accepting a lower level of medical care. That is why I won't be bullied into any kind of quick fix. And the truth is that AMR is failing our community. This company hasn't provided enough ambulance service for Multnomah County families for almost 2 years. And at the same time, they've expanded into Washington County.
Okay, that taxpayer comment raises attention, but here's the issue with that. Those fire departments, Portland Fire, Gresham Fire, Corbett Fire, they're begging Vega Pederson to approve a change to a one-in-one model, saying their crews are stressed by the way the system works now. A month ago, Portland Fire Chief Ryan Gillespie wrote to county EMS leaders saying not making this change is irresponsible at best. Currently, with fewer ambulance crews on the road, firefighters are forced to wait with patients at critical scenes or transport someone on the back of a bus or a truck. That's not how the system should work. I asked Portland Fire and Rescue again today after the chair's statements and received this. The status of transport ambulances in the city of Portland is critically insufficient. Portland Fire and Rescue encourages Multnomah County EMS to pilot a one EMT and one paramedic staffing model. In situations where AMR paramedics need more help, PF&R would continue to respond with Code 3 lights and sirens to assist. Fire leaders have repeatedly said they respond to every critical call in Multnomah County, meaning they're bringing their own paramedic and other trained first responders to the scene of an emergency. But Vega Pederson says that 25% of the time, triage 911 calls are later escalated to a more life-threatening status, and fire crews aren't there. That's why she and others swear by two paramedics on each ambulance.
In Multnomah County, because of the growing 911 call volume, fire agencies in 2023 were able to respond to only 75% of 911 medical calls that were ultimately found to be life-threatening. Responding to all emergencies is not currently feasible for our fire agency partners.
So the chair is worried about potential future harm, but there is current harm right now. We covered a story on this show where a man in a wheelchair hit by a car died in the street waiting for an ambulance to get to him. It took 32 minutes for an AMR crew to get there. And the data shows Multnomah County dispatchers do not have an ambulance available to send to emergencies every single day. It's called Level 0. Last year, there were 14,774 911 calls in Multnomah County and that were Level 0 compliant. Nearly 15,000 times when the response was, well, Hopefully we can get one to you soon. That averages out to around 40 times per day of those level 0 calls. AMR ambulance crews are late to about 40% of emergency calls in Multnomah County, and late means it takes more than 8 minutes to get there. When seconds and minutes matter, that's important. And AMR is down 60 paramedics, losing 2 more every month. Now, it is true that AMR has failed to meet county standards that were included in the contract they agreed to. They signed up for this. This is the company's problem. But saying hire more paramedics falls short when there are, by all accounts from everyone I've talked to, no more paramedics to hire. Saying train and incentivize more falls short when AMR currently has 32 EMTs in paramedic school on full ride $17,000 per person scholarships. And the company says it's essentially offering full rides to anyone who is interested. I talked with AMR leaders this afternoon after the chair's comments. The company says the county's response won't solve the problem or save lives. And the problem with Vega Pederson saying AMR needs to send a plan to fix this problem within the next month is that AMR just sent a plan. They did it last week. We covered it here in detail. AMR promised to fix response time problems within 3 months if allowed to temporarily staff with a one-on-one model. County EMS leaders and Vega Pederson just didn't like that plan. And that's fine. They have their reasons, pointing to medical studies, cardiac arrest survival rates, data points that support a two-paramedic system. But in the meantime, the people of Multnomah County are suffering now. Many of you have written to us in the past saying you would rather have an ambulance show up on time no matter how it's staffed. Without quick, decisive action, some kind of compromise, a short temporary change, the harm that we fear is a bigger and bigger part of our reality. So what are you thinking about this? Do you agree with Vega Pederson's hard stance that this is purely an AMR problem and they should be the only ones responsible to fix it and they should be doing more? Or do you think there's wiggle room when it comes to that two-paramedic requirement, considering the risk to public health that we're facing now with slow response times that are getting worse rather than better? Email this story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. New developments today regarding that bill in Salem that has many of you fired up. Senate Bill 1548 would make standard time permanent and do away with daylight saving time. It's what Arizona, Hawaii, and some U.S. territories have already done. The bill passed a Senate committee on a unanimous 5-0 vote last week with a recommendation that the full Senate pass the bill. It had its second reading in front of the full Senate yesterday, and a third reading and vote happened today. We're going to show you how the vote played out. Keep an eye on the tally of votes towards the bottom of the screen.
President Wagner.
Aye.
Yeah, the laughs there because the vote ended in a tie. And because there's not a tie-breaking vote, which some other states do have, by the way, the bill failed. It needs a majority to pass. But some quick thinking just a few moments after the vote by one of the bill's chief sponsors kept the effort alive for now.
Recognize Senator Thatcher.
Point of order. I have a question.
State your point.
I had a script in my pocket in case it did fail, but it says, having voted on the prevailing side, I serve notice of possible reconsideration. So I ask you, what is the motion now? Okay. All right. So then I guess I understand now that I will request a unanimous, well, I guess I just want to change my vote to no. There you go. And then serve notice of possible reconsideration, having voted on the prevailing side with a no.
Just classic legislative drama, right? So let's explain what happened there. The bill failed, but Senator Thatcher then switched her yes vote to a no vote and asked for something called reconsideration. And this is all because of Senate rules. You can find this 85-page document online. We did. We're heading to page 27 for the section on reconsideration. Here's how it works. Someone from the prevailing side of a vote, in this case the people who voted no, can request reconsideration. That's why Thatcher had to switch her yes vote to a no vote in order to be on the prevailing side. Once she was, she could ask for reconsideration, Well, because we're in the short session, any reconsideration has to happen the same day as when it was called for. And that's what happened at the end of today's Senate floor session. The senators had to vote on whether or not they would even consider the reconsideration, which they approved 26-3. At that point, Senator Thatcher begrudgingly said she wanted to send the bill back to committee in order to add a trigger amendment, meaning the bill could pass the legislature but would not take effect until a trigger is met. Other discussions on the bill talked about adding a trigger if nearby states make the permanent standard time switch, Washington, California, and Idaho among them. I say Thatcher begrudgingly made that request because while the bill was being discussed ahead of the first vote, at least one other senator thought a trigger would make more sense. So Oregon's not on its own little island of standard time if we were the first to do this in the Pacific Northwest. And then the full Senate had to vote a third time to approve moving the bill to the Senate Rules Committee to add that amendment. That vote passed as well. The bill has not been updated on the legislature's website just yet, so the exact details of that trigger amendment are not yet clear. But we expect to get an update when the Senate Rules Committee meets again on Thursday afternoon. And for what it's worth, Washington's bill to make standard time permanent is officially dead. Their next chance to do something would be in their next legislative session in January. There are bills in both California and Idaho to make standard time permanent. Those are both still in their original committees. And while we're talking about state legislatures, let's pause for a moment in Olympia to keep our neighbors in Washington informed. Several voter-backed initiatives challenging state policy there have been filed. Lawmakers will soon hold hearings on 3 of them. The other 3 will be sent straight to voters in November. These are the 3 Washington voters will definitely have a say on in the general election. An initiative to repeal the state's new climate law called the Climate Commitment Act. Another calls for repealing the capital gains tax. The third would allow people to opt out of the long-term care payroll deduction. Public hearings for the other 3 will be held at the end of this month. One initiative rolls back the police pursuit restrictions passed in 2021. Another bans any income tax proposals. And one guarantees rights to parents when it comes to medical and educational records. After those public hearings, legislators have 3 options. They can adopt the measures without a vote of the people. They can propose a different measure on the same subject and send that to the ballot, or they can reject it and then let voters decide come November. Back here in Oregon and also on the political beat, big news when it comes to who could be challenging Republican Lori Chavez-DeRemer for Oregon's 5th Congressional District in November. 3 big names had their hats in the ring for Democrats: Metro Council President Lynn Pederson, State Rep Janelle Bynum, and Jamie McLeod-Skinner. But just this morning, Lynn Pederson withdrew from the race and endorsed Janelle Bynum. That means the Democratic primary will be a head-to-head matchup between Bynum and McLeod-Skinner. National pundits once again think Oregon's 5th district will be a key contest to help determine control of the House. Jamie McLeod-Skinner lost to Chavez-DeRemer in the 2022 general election, a big pickup for House Republicans in Congress. But she certainly has supporters. She upset 7-term incumbent Kurt Schrader in the Democratic primary in 2022, ahead of that loss to Chavez-DeRemer. But State Rep Bynum has a good track record against Chavez-DeRemer, beating her twice for a seat in the Oregon House, first in 2016 and again in 2018. Though it's worth noting a campaign for state office is a different ballgame than Congress. But Bynum has picked up the endorsement of the now withdrawn Lynn Pederson, who wrote, "I believe State Rep Janelle Bynum is the best candidate to defeat Chavez-DeRemer. She has my enthusiastic endorsement and full support, and I urge all 5th District Democrats to entrust her with this work." Up next on the story, when we talk about Oregon's drug crisis, a term that's often thrown around is harm reduction. Blair Best followed a crew doing that work today and was subsequently told this by someone on the street.
A lot of that makes it really easy to be a homeless drug addict.
How a small nonprofit defends the work it does with drug supplies when the story returns. This week, we've been taking a look at the impact of the drug crisis on our neighborhoods, including parts of downtown Portland. Yesterday, we told you how police arrested 10 suspected fentanyl dealers around the area of Southwest 10th and Jefferson in the span of just 2 weeks. Tonight, Blair Best takes us 2 blocks from that corner to show us what harm reduction looks like in action.
There are many reasons homeless people addicted to drugs migrate to these Southwest Portland Park blocks. For one thing, it's where they get free food.
3 days a week right here during lunch.
But there's another big reason.
Yeah, one of the reasons, yeah.
And it lies in a storage unit about 20 minutes away in North Portland.
The hammer pipes are more commonly used for fentanyl.
Mike is digging through a box of brand new drug supplies.
There's the filters.
He's a volunteer with Portland People's Outreach Project, more commonly known as PPOP.
The idea is you have your pill that goes in here.
They're a small nonprofit handing out survival gear for homeless people, along with every type of tool for using drugs one can think of, including fentanyl foil.
We have this and folks tear off. You know, people usually don't need very much space. You know, the pills are real small.
The group is funded in part by Measure 110, but they also rely on donations. Some come out of Mike's own pocket.
So I've gone and I've bought things like the incontinence supplies, or I think I had gotten a couple rolls of foil at one point.
Through their outreach, the group brings these supplies to homeless people across the city. One of their stops, the South Park blocks by Jefferson Street and Park Avenue, the latest hub for drug use downtown.
We have always gone to the places where people are rather than the other way around.
A lot of that makes it really easy to be a homeless drug addict.
We are helping them make better choices.
Like Nate, who says he goes to them for one thing.
I always have a Narcan on me because of services like theirs. Personally, I've Narcaned 6 or 7 people in the last month or month and a half.
Same with Andrew.
I'm sorry, this just happened. My heart's pounding.
He just finished using Narcan on a man who overdosed around the corner.
This is probably the 30th time I've done this in the past year.
Mike sees that as a reason to keep sending supplies to the streets.
You know, if we closed our doors tomorrow and we never came back, people would still be using drugs, but they wouldn't be using them with Narcan. They wouldn't be using them with this community that we've established.
A community that admits it's walking a very fine line.
Having more services, being able to sleep outdoors, and generally not be messed with, you know, the decriminalization of it, you know, and I'm torn between that too as an addict. I don't know what the answer is.
Multnomah County does support similar harm reduction efforts, though they say they do not fund PPOP. They told me that they stopped handing out smoking supplies for fentanyl users back in July, and they have no plans on restarting that program. A program, might I add, that faced major backlash from city leaders. Today, they say their focus is working with the city and state on reducing deaths and overdoses. In Southwest Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, as always, to Blair and her on-the-ground reporting. Up next on The Story, the Pacific Northwest is a pioneer when it comes to human composting, basically being turned into soil after you've passed away. Washington and Oregon were 2 of the first 3 states to allow it, but it's not like your normal burial. How does it work? We'll explain when The Story returns. As we head across the Columbia to the state of Washington, which is leading the way when it comes to offering choices for someone's final resting place. Washington was the first to offer human composting as an alternative to burial or cremation. Oregon was not far behind, becoming the third state to allow it in 2021. The numbers show more and more people are choosing to go this route, but how does it actually work? Drew Mickelson with our sister station in Seattle has the story.
I was fascinated by the concept.
Living on Queen Anne, Sarah Lewinton likes being close to downtown, but also enjoys having a yard.
It's all native plants, bird friendly, wildlife friendly, butterfly friendly.
And there's the family tree planted 5 years ago.
When we decided to do this, my daughter especially right away said, "Oh, you can be part of our tree."
Sarah has made arrangements to be here forever.
The remains then can be used to fertilize the kinds of plants that keep us from disappearing as human beings from the earth, even if we're disappearing as individuals.
This used to be a Boeing manufacturer once upon a time.
She signed on with Seattle-based Earth.
We call this the vessel room,
a company that uses an Auburn warehouse to turn human remains into soil.
So a lot of thought went into the vessel design and not making it look sort of Frankenstein-esque in appearance.
Tom Harries is CEO.
This is the output. So you're left with this really sort of nice, soily, woody amendment.
They clean and wrap the remains in a plant-based shroud and place them on a bed of mulch, wood chips, and wildflowers. It's enclosed in what Earth calls a vessel that is slowly rotated. In about 6 weeks, it's soil.
This is completely natural, no insects. We get asked that sometimes. Certainly no chemicals. This is pure nature optimized.
Earth is one of 4 companies licensed in Washington to conduct human composting. 3 use containers, but Herland Forest near Goldendale conducts the procedure both below and above ground.
If you're seeing this, it's because you're on Death Talk. Welcome. We're Return Home, and we're a human composting business just outside of Seattle, Washington.
It's a growing industry, too. 6 other states now allow it, and all 4 Washington companies have seen an increase in customers from around the world. After one person chose the procedure in Washington in 2020, more than 100 were composted in 2021, and that number more than doubled the next year.
Theoretically, we can go up to 200 vessels in this space.
Back at Earth, they're killing it. They say Mother Nature, though, should get some of the credit.
You can have this gentle natural process that's net carbon neutral, that transforms you into soil, and then this soil is used for reforestation and whatever personal memorialization you would wish for.
On average, a family will take 1 to 5 of these boxes of their loved one's soil, but they could take it all. In some cases, up to a couple of wheelbarrows worth.
The environmental part was the biggest deal for us.
Sarah Lewinton hopes she has another 20 good years, but there's some peace knowing she won't ever be far from home.
I'm looking at these trees right now and thinking, oh, we could put some here, we could put some there.
Sure.
Oh, I'm already finding ways to distribute the soil that comes from my body, and we don't even have it yet.
Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Hey, I'd love to know what you think about human composting. Email the story, give us a call, let us know your thoughts. A great idea, something you're interested in, something that gives you a different feeling. Let us know. That's the end of our show tonight. Thanks for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. Investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi has an incredible story for you coming tomorrow here on The Story. You may have seen the commercials for it. It's making its debut on our show. You've heard of switched at birth, but have you also heard of switched at death? A case of mistaken identity. I've talked to them about this one for a while now, and trust me, it'll raise some eyebrows and also be an interesting one to follow along. We hope to see you then tomorrow, 6:30. Until then, have a great night.